Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 29 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined today, as always, by my ever-faithful lead cloud engineer, John Goodall. How are you doing today, John?
You just love that intro, don't you? You love it. It's great.
I'm laying the love on thick and fast to make you feel valued, the valued employee that you and co-host that you are.
Honestly, I can't complain. Feeling the love, and I know I'm desperate to get this out. I have to say this because I know you're annoyed at me now. I fitted my tap.
Oh, the tap. Yes. Well, we do very often talk about John's plumbing on the podcast, and I'm sure that regular listeners will be absolutely desperate to know the outcome of the tap issue. But
yeah.
So you fitted it, and you now have no leaks.
Yes, I now have no leaks. I'm
Great.
a lot better at plumbing than I used to be.
Listeners will be sleeping better tonight after listening to this episode to know that your kitchen tap is fixed. And we're also joined today by a very special guest, Girish Mukim, fellow AWS community builder from Toronto in Canada. How are you doing today, Girish?
Yeah, I'm doing good. And thanks, looking forward to talk to Carl, John, both of you. I've been here before, so I'm very excited to meet you again. And I'm AWS community builder. This is 3 years I'm into this program. Very nice, very exciting to be in part of this program. And I'm also AWS ambassador, right? I worked at IBM as a solutions architect. And as part of APN partnership between AWS and IBM, I'm part of ambassador program. So yeah, so nice to be here, and looking forward to talk to you.
Did you go to the recent Ambassador Summit in Seattle?
No, I couldn't, and it was more to do with visa, US visa, right? So it's not easy to get, but yeah, I'm looking forward for next year. And even,
I tell you what, that is a whole money printing exercise. Like as a Brit, I don't need a visa to go to the States, which is I'm incredibly grateful for. I do still have to pay $21 for a visa waiver.
Oh.
Yeah, it's all about money at the end of the day. It's all about money. But well, maybe next year that gives you more time to pass all 12 AWS exams and get your gold jacket, because I believe that's where they're handed out, isn't it? The Ambassador Summit.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
How many have you got to go?
Oh, it's a lot. I just halfway through, so I have 6, 7, I think. But they keep on adding. But good thing is they removed 3 right recently, specialty AWS, SAP and all that. Yeah, so they're making it almost same. So let's see, maybe next year.
I think there's no way they can deny you a visa if you say you're going to Seattle to get your gold jacket. I mean, that's got to be guaranteed entry to the US, I'm sure. So.
Yeah.
You cannot deny a man his gold jacket after all of that effort and hard work that he's put in. Anyway, we're not here to talk about gold jackets and taps. As regular listeners to the podcast will know, once a week I curate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter, which, and big shout out to me, hit its 200th edition on Friday last week. So I was making great use of the new built-in Apple reactions to celebrate the 200th edition of the weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. But when the newsletter goes out, John and I pick a subset of the articles from the newsletter that we'd like to talk about with our guests. So, of course, we do have such a selection of articles this week to chat about with John and Girish. And the first of those is about a new feature for AWS Lambda, which now supports SnapStart for Java functions that use the ARM64 architecture. And I paused over the SnapStart there because when I was doing the video on Friday last week for the news roundup, I said snapshot about 5 times and had to start all over again. So I've managed to say snap start this time, so we won't have to start all over again. So John, tell us a bit more about the new snap start for Java functions using ARM64.
Still got your teeth in. Snap start. Yeah, okay. So quick definition, snap start. You could be forgiven for calling it snapshot because snapshots are involved, although not in the traditional kind of backup sense. What SnapStart does in a Lambda context is when you have a Lambda execution environment, you have this what's called the cold start problem. The cold start problem is there's nothing provisioned for you to run. Your Lambda's deployed, it's all ready to go. You send an execution event to it, and the first thing that the service does is it provisions the compute environment. So it deploys a container to the host, it pulls your code into the container, and it then fires the event at it, and things happen. Depending on the execution runtime that you're using, that can be anywhere from sort of a couple of seconds up to sort of 5, 6, 7 seconds. And Java is horrendous for this because the JRE environment is enormous. It's gigabytes, it's huge. What SnapStart does is it does all of that pre-provisioning right up until the point where it would send the execution event, and then it takes a snapshot of the environment. And that means that it can accelerate that config into the environment a lot faster than it would do for these really big runtimes, Java being a key one. That's great because, like I say, your Java execution environment, the JRE, can be gigabytes, and it takes a long time to get things going. But once it's already up and hot, your warm starts are very, very fast because Java executes quite quickly. It's used for trading applications quite a lot. When I was at a financial institution, everything was in Java because a bunch of Java devs, but the execution runtime was really, really fast. And they actually sat and did the maths and just kind of went, we're going to keep using Java and we're just going to do things like provision concurrency to get around this cold start because the execution is so quick once it's actually running. Up till now, for Java, that was only available for x86. So that's normal 64-bit execution. Intel, I don't know if you could use AMD for Lambdas. I don't know if it was supported. It's just, 64-bit x86. And now you can use it for ARM. And everybody should be using ARM. I have no issues with anyone wanting to migrate to ARM. ARM gives you generally better price to performance, which 90% of the time makes it cheaper. Sometimes it makes it the same price or slightly more expensive, but you get a lot more compute for the money. So that's why they always talk about price to performance. And enabling SnapStart within Java for ARM basically means more and more people are now able to make use of this. So yeah, no complaints. Generally good.
Thoughts on this, Girish? Relevant in your world?
Yeah, for sure. Like I have used, I'm limited experimentation with this, but for one of my clients, right, they were using provision concurrency, which is huge cost. So when we are trying out SnapStart, so we liked it because it's saving the cost for a client. At the same time, it is Java specific, right? So we are for that context, we are happy to go with SnapStart, and now they're opening it for ARM. For sure, many customers will be looking up to this announcement and using it in the future. Yeah, that's the only thing. Provision concurrency does not work with SnapStart because both are almost doing the same. Provision concurrency charging you for a little bit more flexibility or performance, but SnapStart is free, right? So why not use it?
Sounds good. We like this feature.
Yeah.
Anything that makes Java run faster is good.
Yeah. Absolutely. On that note, let's move on to the second article for this week, which is from the AWS Training and Certifications blog, which is about the addition of some new exam question types. And Girish, we've established that you're an AWS APN ambassador, which means you've got lots of AWS certifications. So I think you're pretty well qualified to talk to us on this subject. Traditionally, AWS exams have had a combination of multiple choice and multiple answer questions, where there's either one right answer or you have to pick several answers to make up the correct answer. But now there's some new question types for some of the new certifications that have been introduced. And the ones that are mentioned in this post are ordering questions, matching questions, and case study questions. So what are your thoughts on these new question types, Girish?
Yeah, for sure. So if I start with case studies, there are 3 different question types what is introduced by AWS. If I start with case studies, I think that is a welcome change. The reason for that, right? Even scenario-based questions or case study type of questions were already be there. If you see in the context of reading scenario and answering the question, right? That is already there in mainly for professional level certificate or specialty level certificate. We have maybe half page of a question and answering just one question using that context what we got. Now we are looking at maybe 2 to 3 questions and just reading one scenario, right? So I think that is going to help learners to answer more than one question based on the context. So case studies, definitely I liked it. Ordering is a bit what I see, it tests you more compared to giving a single choice. Here what is happening is you need to know the topic in depth to put it in order, right? So I see it's adding a little bit complexity when AWS introduced ordering. And second thing is matching. When I looked at this first time, right, I think about this maybe my history exam in my schooling days, right? We have fill in the blanks and matching questions I think like it's almost similar, but AWS picked up that pattern. And it's like, I don't know how that's going to be good or bad for learners, but definitely it's like welcome change overall. But mind you, this is not for all the existing certificates. This announcement is only specific for AI practitioner and machine learning associate. So there is a lot to change in other certifications if it happens in the future. But I see this as a pilot like change they are making for only new certificate what they introduced recently.
I'd
I
like
think a
to
lot
see
of
this
this-
change backfilled into some of the existing ones, because I have no interest in doing either of those two new ones particularly. I'm not targeting the gold jacket because I don't care. We'll make a gold gilet or something when I get the other two solutions architect ones. But yeah, you're not wrong. The matching one is a bit kind of primary school, which it sort of feels like a workbook. It's not a bad thing because you can look at it and go, oh, I actually know the answer to this. Bang, 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 bang. And because it's not, it might be 65 or 75 questions or whatever it is, but they're not equally weighted questions because it's I forget the name, it's like a calibrated exam or something. So it might be one question out of your set of 65, but it might be worth 50 points versus 20 points because it's actually a bigger question. And if you know the answer, and this is kind of the thing with a lot of AWS exams, some of them you can reason your way through, others you just have to know it. And these ones feel like you're just going to have to know it. But if you do just know it, it's not going to take you the 90 seconds, 2 minutes a question would normally take, because it's just click, 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 click. Oh, great, moving on. And you get your 50 or 60 points or whatever a lot faster. So no complaints there. You say as well about the ordering question and about it adding complexity, but it's still not being a practical thing. So AWS dabbled with practical tests with the SysOps associate, which Carl and I have both done. I think Carl did it before they made it a practical thing, and then I did it after they took it away again. So neither of us have done that. But it takes it kind of closer to that, because even though, as you say, you have to know it really well, and if you did it in a practical one, you'd try it in a certain order and it wouldn't work, you've then wasted time trying it. So it feels like it's getting closer to a more practical assessment, which is good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think the exams generally have a kind of a life cycle, don't they? So the Solutions Architect Associate, for example, has just changed since I sat it a year or so ago.
Yeah, it's on
I
version
sat the
3
previous
now.
version. Yeah, the new version came out the day after I sat my exam. So I think they kind of last 2 or 3 years. So I'd imagine, as some of the current exam versions start phasing out, then perhaps they will start to phase in some of these new question types into future generations of those exams, rather than just kind of try and shoehorn these new question types into all of the existing exams that are out there. But do you guys think that this is going to make it easier or harder, alternating between question types, to give you a bit of a brain a bit of a rest to try and think in a different way? Or does it make it even more difficult that, this is that type of question, now this is a different type of question, and I have to reprogram how I'm thinking about this?
Yeah.
What do you?
Only thing I can think of, right? Those who already have given AWS certifications before, it might be a difference, right? I don't know whether it will be making it more complex or tough for learners. But for new joiner, like somebody starting new, this AWS journey, for them it doesn't really matter, right? Because everything is new. But like, for existing one, I see like when I'm appearing for exams, right? That will be on back of my mind. Okay, there is something new which I haven't done in past. So that like what do you call that mind block will be there initially, but eventually things will plan out well, right? Yeah.
What do you think, John?
I don't see it making a material difference because it's in exams I have no interest in doing, so that's a big thing. But no, I don't see it making a particular difference.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, let's move on to our third article for this week. And this is an article from the AWS database blog about achieving near real-time analytics with Amazon DynamoDB and zero ETL for Amazon OpenSearch service. And I didn't realize when I first selected this article, it was actually all about replacing some functionality of a third-party product which has been acquired. But I guess a lot of the steps that are in there could easily be applied to other scenarios. What are your thoughts on this one, John?
This is an excellent way of making your bill go up.
Yeah.
OpenSearch is spendy. So My hatred of ETL systems is long and storied on this podcast. As regular listeners will know, and as new listeners are about to find out, the first job I ever had was working on an ETL system for an investment bank. So come at me with your pitchforks, eat the rich, but I'm not rich. I don't work there anymore. But the result of which is I absolutely hate ETL systems because they are the work of just whichever deity that is the bad one in your particular faith, right? I don't like them. So anything that takes away the need for an ETL system it gets a +1 in my book. It's just great, wonderful. In terms of the purpose of this, near real-time analytics with DynamoDB and zero ETL. Cool. So you're taking in things into Dynamo, you're running that through kind of your stream, doing your ongoing replication, and you're replicating into S3 as well for reasons. And then you can do your kind of business intelligence through OpenSearch, because OpenSearch, for the unfamiliar, is AWS's implementation of Elasticsearch at the point that Elastic made Elasticsearch non-open source. So this is probably well known at this point, but in case you weren't familiar, that's what we mean when we say OpenSearch. It's like an older but equally not version of Elastic, and it's pretty good for analytics and doing that kind of thing because you get a really nice interface and you can look at graphs and sort of all the rest of it. Real-time querying, great, love that. More data coming in as you need it. Brilliant for things like business intelligence because you can make real-time decisions on how to transact your business, particularly for like an e-commerce provider, in real time, which is really important if you're particularly high volume but low margins. So good. Generally like anything that takes away the need for ETL, I like. So yes, I'm going to take this. But as you say, it's a way of replacing a third-party product, which AWS absolutely has a habit of doing. It's a little bit naughty, I feel, where they'll buy up a product, buy up a company, and then shut the service down. And then 2 years later, they'll do a feature announcement and say, we do this now. Yes, it was the thing that you bought 2 years ago. Don't know if that's the case here. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the third-party integration. But yeah, that's just minor gripe.
Well, no, this third-party tool has been bought by OpenAI. So
kill it.
Yeah,
kill
here's
it
how you can do this without using that product. Is what this article is all about. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this one, Girish?
Yeah, so if customer is already using OpenSearch, then it's a welcome change, right? For example, like DynamoDB, and you have it OpenSearch in your toolkit, then it's good. But anybody will choose OpenSearch due to this announcement? I don't think so, right? It is a good thing if you're already using it, but not so much to as a decision factor to go with OpenSearch, because OpenSearch is really costly, as John said, right? Because I've been using for my POCs with GenAI, and they use OpenSearch for a vector database, right? And I can see that cost piling up to the point like I just need to shut it off, right? I am having some credit from AWS Community Builder, so I'm okay to go for a few days, but I cannot keep it running. So that's what, like, OpenSearch is a costly service, but good change if we are already using DynamoDB.
Minor gripe at the end of the article as well. It says fully serverless architecture. If you prefer a fully serverless architecture, OpenSearch offers serverless configuration. No, it doesn't. No. They call it serverless. It doesn't scale to zero. No.
We're back on that. We're getting onto this subject every week at the moment, it seems. So
It's AI and scale to zero. We should rename the podcast.
Yeah.
Scale to zero AI.
Yeah. Using AI. Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, before John loses his proverbial, let's move on to the fourth article for this week.
I've got so annoyed I woke the cat up.
Yeah. So the fourth article for this week is also from the AWS database blog, and this one is about enhancing database performance with Amazon RDS dedicated log volumes. So I'll come to you first on this one, Girish. What are your thoughts on the dedicated log volumes for RDS?
Yeah, I like first thing came to my mind is why so late, right? Because this is very basic database administration, right? When you have like a log volume, right, and then like a volume where data sits, it has to be separated, right? And this been doing as a best practice for DBAs from years on premises. So it should have been done way ahead, like for this. But it's like I see like this a very good performance improvement, because I don't know whether it's possible, but when you're segregating your log, first let's see how it, like, what is it, right? You have your data sitting somewhere and you have your transaction log sitting somewhere, right? Up till now, RDS just give one storage, right? Everything sits there. Now they segregated the log volume and keep it in the different storage. So I see that as an improvement on the performance, and there could be a leverage to change storage type for each of these, right? For example, you need a faster storage for log, transaction log. There should be possibility of doing it. I haven't tried it myself, so I can't talk whether that is there or it can come in future, but that is a good thing to have. And yeah, so this is a good change for performance standpoint, but only thing is they didn't have it for all the engines. I like to see it for all the engines RDS supported. I don't see it Oracle there. I'm using Oracle for one of my client. I would love to use this feature, but that's not there for Oracle, right? It's there for Postgres SQL and few other engines, but I like to see this for all the remaining engines which RDS supports.
Yeah, Oracle can screw off. I don't care about Oracle in the slightest.
Yeah, RDS don't care. Yeah,
you're not wrong, to be honest, about this being something of a long time coming. This first job I had was over a decade ago now, and it was on premises and it was SQL Server based. And yes, logs were on a different volume because, well, obviously, disk management within RDS in particular, or databases more generally, is a thing you have to care about because you're generating a load of logs as you're doing things, tran logs, bin logs, whatever the engine calls it, and you've got a load of data stored in your tables. And you could have a really long running process that's actually deleting a load of data, but because you're generating so much log doing it, you're actually using more disk to do that, and you've got to worry about your log rotation and how long you hang on to it and sort of all that kind of thing, which you don't really want to have to worry about in a managed services environment. You just want it to take care of it. And this is kind of the whole, okay, well, you put storage auto scaling on, but you can't go back again. So I only want my log volume to be enormous to cope with these big peaks in logs whilst I'm doing these weird delete or archiving operations. But I don't need my data volumes to be enormous. They can be nice and small and tight because I'm not actually storing lots of data. It's a transactional database, for instance. So yeah, long time coming. I'm not surprised it's been Postgres, MariaDB, and MySQL, which is funny because Oracle own MySQL, but they haven't done it for Oracle DB. Okay, and a common migration target for Oracle users is Postgres. So it's not that dissimilar because people kind of migrate into that quite a lot. So it's an interesting one. In terms of why it's taken so long, yeah. Not sure. I wonder if it was a case of they focused on getting all the really cool replication bits working first. And as it says, whilst this is supported for, hang on, there's a consideration. Let me see if I can find it. So supported for single instance, multi-AZ and read replica, but it's not supported for clustered deployments. So I wonder if that was kind of the focus of get all the replication and the clustering working first, and then we can worry about this whole. You don't need it. It's a very nice feature. It's nice to have, and it helps with your log management and your disk management, but you don't strictly need it, especially if you do turn on storage auto scaling, because you just sort of say, give me a big disk and move on with my life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so overall is good, right? But as you said, right, there can be a thought of taking care of replication first, making sure that that works, and then go to better management. I'm seeing like this is going to help for sure, and then let's see like whether they really do it for other engines or they say like, okay, that the based on what you just said, John, right? Oracle may not be on their pipeline, right? We don't know, but like, yeah, let's see what's hold for this feature in the future.
Well, sounds like a feature request to me, Girish. We do get them occasionally on the podcast. So that's a feature request from Girish Mukim, who would like DLV for Oracle on RDS. So if anyone in the Two Pizza team for that is listening from AWS, there you go. Get it on the roadmap, please.
I've always been confused about that. I know the concept of Two Pizza because it's, and the maximum number of people you could feed with two pizzas. But these have got to be enormous pizzas because I could eat a whole extra large by myself.
You haven't been to America, have you? Have you been to America and ordered an extra large pizza? Yeah, it's about the size of my desk. An extra large pizza in America. They can't fit them in those boxes that they use on the back of the delivery truck, the delivery bikes over here. Those boxes are just not big enough.
I suppose that's why you can buy pizza by the slice over there and you can't over here.
No, they should change like 2 pizza large size, like 2 pizza large team, 2 pizza small team.
Oh yeah. It depends. Yeah. 2 pizza slice team. Yeah, if you get a really small project. So yeah. Anyway, this is making me hungry, all this talk of pizza, but we still got another article to talk about before I can go and eat anything. So the final article that we chose to talk about this week is all about CPU benchmarking. So we've spoken about Graviton CPUs before, AWS's own silicon that they now build after the acquisition of Annapurna Labs a number of years ago. And this article on TechSpot is all about the Graviton CPU shown beating AMD and Intel processors in multiple benchmarks. So it's quite technical. It's not specifically about AWS. It's more about CPU benchmarks. But I know that CPU benchmarks have been a very popular topic in the press over the years. So how's it stacking up, John?
Yeah, it's winning in some cases, and it doesn't appear to in others, unless I'm reading the graph wrong and the scales are inverting, because some benchmarks, smaller is better and larger is better. I'm not surprised that they're trying to sort of bang on about this, because they don't have to buy the damn things. They can manufacture them. Presumably, they can manufacture them for less than they can buy in Intel and AMD CPUs. I'm not surprised to see the AMD EPYC CPUs outperforming the Intel Xeons consistently. I'm not surprised to see that. That's pretty common. And the other thing that's really kind of interesting as well about this, and it's not specific to this, but something I learned over the weekend, is Intel CPUs. I don't know if this applies to Xeons, but it certainly applies to sort of 13th and 14th gen I series, have an issue with the microcode where they're burning parts of the chips out really quickly. So it's in AWS's benefit to get more people not using Intel chips, so their chip cost goes down, because they can acquire them for cheaper, and I suspect the longevity is a bit longer as well. So generally, this doesn't surprise me. The other thing that's also not an entirely fair comparison is the chipsets are fundamentally different, and we know that ARM outperforms 32-bit, 64-bit instruction sets consistently across the board, and the EPYC and the Xeon chips are the old x86 instruction set, and we know that ARM outperforms it. There's a reason that historically, if you needed to do high performance compute, you use the GPU, and that's because it's full of ARM chips. They just respond to I/O and high performance compute workloads better. So this doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I'd really like to see, though, that whilst Graviton 4th gen is now available in certain HPC cluster configurations in AWS in EC2, I'd really like to see Graviton 3 come to Lambda. Get on with it.
Another feature request. That's 2 in this episode of the podcast. So, so thoughts on this, Girish?
Yeah, not very much. Like John covered it well. Like what's his take on it, and I kind of agree to that. And I see like it is a shout out from AWS, right? Use Graviton so that like as John said, right? Like the cost can be reduced if you're like it's a volume business, right? If you're like having more customers using Graviton is going to help AWS anyway. I see that kind of thing, but as it is like AWS specific Graviton story, right? I'm not surprised to see that Graviton wins on most of the benchmarks there, right?
Yeah, I mean, the graphs that they put out, the top one, it just annihilates the competition. And then the second and third graphs, it's firmly mid-table, because it's what ARM chips aren't really good at doing, and the other chips are a lot better at doing, is they've got lots of different core counts, which means that they're just, you can just use a different one, which is kind of handy. And that's kind of through CPU binning, which, if you're not familiar, yes, I'm a complete hardware nerd. The idea is that CPU manufacturers consistently try to make the best CPU they can. And because it's really hard to make a CPU, you won't always get all 128 cores to kind of talk back to you. So you just bin them down and call it a 96 core chip, because you might have had 100 come back and go, okay, that's a 96 core, job done. So that's kind of interesting, because what you're sort of seeing is as you've got more cores, certain workloads respond better to just having more cores. And I do wonder if the manufacturing process for Graviton chips is just not mature enough to be able to cope with this kind of variable response you get from CPU binning.
Okay. Got it.
Girish, you mentioned you're working on a lot of migrations. Are you seeing a lot of your customers going on to Graviton CPUs?
Yeah, there are a mix of that, right? Graviton, like if they have like opinion on say Intel, right? So customers are clearly asking, we need Intel. It's not like everybody is okay to go with Graviton. I've seen that cases, but in general, right? Yeah, in general, like if there is no opinionated request coming from client, yeah, Graviton is not bad, right? So we see like it's like we are using Graviton a lot in for our customer base. So I don't see any issues doing that, unless like, and I see like even if it is a vendor product, right? So vendor is also like asking for certain type of processors. So that's another discussions we need to have with client. But in general, I am seeing like good traction for Graviton. And like even in Graviton, right, if you see database, right, Aurora and all that, the same thing, like if its volume goes, like number of IOs are increasing, they're saying cost is reducing a significant amount, right? So I think like Graviton anyway, like backbone processor, I'm thinking like AWS is using for all the database layers as well, database application. So,
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense because, yes, if you're running your application on Graviton versus Intel or AMD, yes, you do have to worry about the fact that the instruction set's different. I mean, when it first came out, when the Apple chips first came out, things like you couldn't even run Docker on an M1 Mac because it wasn't supported. And you had all of this kind of Rosetta and translation layers and all the rest of it. That problem doesn't exist anymore. It's been solved. Cool. Excellent. That's largely the case with upstream repos and things, because again, I was playing with it when Graviton 1 first came to Lambda, and we were doing some stuff with user-generated content, generating thumbnails and that kind of thing. And it was the image manipulation that still wasn't supported. You had to do that in x86 because that's just kind of what the modules kind of needed. But generally speaking, as you say, for managed services for things like RDS or Elasticache or pick a managed service that runs on OpenSearch. If it's a managed service, just pick Graviton because it's cheaper.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Well, on that note, that is all we have time for season 3, episode 29 of Logicast. So just remains for me to thank you, John, for your insights as always, and Girish. Been great to have you on. I know I didn't meet you first time round. I'd been in hospital, I think, last year when you came on the podcast. So it's great to actually meet you and talk to you this time. And thank you very much for sharing your insights once again with us and with our listeners. So that was season 3, episode 29 of Logicast. If you enjoyed it, tell your friends. You can download us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to see what we look like when we're talking to you and our amazing use of Apple reactions on the video feed, then check us out on YouTube. Thank you for that demonstration, John. And we'll be back next week with another episode for you. See you again next time. Cheers.